Recording in progress. Good morning, honorable members, and good morning, colleagues. Can we start, Marcy?
Yes, Chair.
Can you then also want to see the agenda?
There, Chair.
No, thank you very much, Marcy. And once more, colleagues, good morning, honorable members and colleagues. I will switch my video because there's a strong wind in Gauteng. So I will switch the video and only use the mic, honorable members. But however, we can start, and let me first welcome all of you in the meeting, and declare this meeting open to honorable members. And I want to most welcome the Deputy Minister. I understand is in the platform, and also the commissioners, and led by the chair. And I will then must move to apologies that I know there's one apology in the group of the Portfolio Committee of Honorable Cebe Khulu, and obviously the apology of the minister. Every Wednesday there's a physical cabinet meeting. So those are the only apologies, except you've got apologies from your side, Mas.
No, Chairperson.
Good morning, Chair. I am on the platform today.
Okay.
Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, everyone. Thank you.
Okay. No, thank you very much, and thank you, Honorable Minister. Today's meeting is to get a report from the Public Service Commission on the investigative analysis into the enablers and inhibitors of job performance of senior management service in the public sector, and further get a brief report from the department and on the professionalization of the public sector, and obvious the presentation of the NSG, that is the champion of the national framework towards professionalization in the public sector. So I will then, before this three presentation, give the minister that is with us today. And immediately the first presentation will be the Public Service Commission. After the Public Service Commission, before the presentation, I will then also give the chair, if he's in the platform, just immediately after the minister. And thank you very much. Over to you, Minister.
No, thank you, Honorable Chairperson of the committee, the Honorable Whip, as well as all honorable members of the Portfolio Committee, the commissioners from our PSC. We've got quite a number of them on the platform. The DGs, DG of the NSG, who is the principal, the DG of the PSC, Advocate Dingi Dube, as well as the DG of the Department of Public Service and Administration. Let me greet also the support team from all our entities, or our organizations, as well as the support from Parliament. A good morning to all, Honorable Chairperson. If I happen to break, Honorable DM also is on the platform, so she will continue, because where I am, I'm in Mpumalanga, in some rural areas of Mpumalanga. The network is not that good, but it comes and goes. Let me greet one and all good morning on this very heavy and important week. We will be celebrating on Friday the International Women's Day, which is, as a public service, we celebrate it even more, because it has been a struggle to transform the public service into the representative body that it is now demographically in South Africa, understanding where we come from. And therefore, days like the International Women's Day are days that remind us to always struggle on, to always have this hope that things will change. Because indeed, for the women in South Africa, things have changed. Yes, there will always be new challenges that arise. We now have what is called gender-based violence, which will be one of the topical issues in the ensuing International Women's Day's activities. But here today, Honorable Chairperson, I was laughing at myself yesterday morning, reminded of the call I received on this day last year, to say go and lead the public service and administration portfolio. And here we are today, 12 months down the line, able to reflect on quite a number of areas that we have achieved as a public service, more so after the professionalization framework was approved by Cabinet in October 2022, and we worked on it to be able to gazette it in August last year. There's quite a lot of work that has gotten into operationalizing that framework. And you will be proud when you listen to the reports that will be shared with the committee, which reflect that amount of work, and which reflect also the way forward. I wouldn't want to really take the sting from the presenters, but we will be talking on all the areas. I think we are thoroughly prepared to talk on all the areas that the committee had invited us to talk on. I will allow, because both, in fact, all three have got their leadership administratively on the platform. We will, with your permission, of course, allow them to proceed with the presentations. We will come in as and when a need arises, but more so at the end, so that we are able to contextualize and close those gaps that they would have left. But for me, we are ably led in administratively. Our principal, we must congratulate him. He has been elected as Secretary General of the body of African intellectuals in the space of national government, schools of government in the various countries in the continent, and is leading that structure called AMDIN, which I believe it is out of seeing the capacity and the abilities that he has, that would have allowed or permitted the intellectuals with him to elect him in that very strategic position. But also the NSG is supporting that body administratively, which shows that we are gradually improving our capacity to be even recognized in the continent. That being said, and therefore congratulations to Professor Busan Nawe and Honorable Chairperson. Let me allow our DGs to lead the presentations. With your permission, of course. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Honorable Minister, and obvious congratulations to the Principal, Professor Ngaweni, on your appointment, and all your best. I'm not sure that the chair is not here of the PSC, and also the deputy chair. I'm told they've got their plenary meeting today, but I will then give the PSC to present. However, I know that the team is also led today by Commissioner Mavuso. PSC.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. It's quite a pleasure indeed to be here to make our presentation as the Public Service Commission. I think it is also worthy of note and quite appropriate to commend the Minister for having completed a year leading this portfolio, ably so, and we really are proud that indeed she's been able to ensure that we do our work accordingly. And I think indeed it has been a very, very important journey that she has embarked upon and what she has actually achieved within a short space of time. The chairperson of the Public Service Commission, Professor Figeni, is currently chairing the plenary session, which is the highest decision-making body of the commission. He allowed me to come and make this presentation together with DDG Sidibe, because the DG is also involved in that process. It's an important matter, but we thought, let us ensure that we allow those who are dealing with the matters to be able to be the ones who do the presentations. I'm currently chairing the committee that deals with management leadership development, together with the DDG Sidibe, who's going to do the presentation. Just to give you a sense, Chair, and the committee and honorable members, this investigative report deals with the analysis into the enablers and inhibitors of performance of senior managers in the public service. It arose out of a process whereupon questions were posed about the senior management service, whether they are competent enough to do their work and whether they understand the jobs they've been appointed onto. So the study was able to capture quite a number of important aspects, which for all intents and purposes were captured into the professionalization framework. In other words, this report is quite an important one, just to give you a sense of where we started and how it evolved over a period of time. I will then allow Dr. Sidibe to do the presentation. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Minister, members of the Portfolio Committee, Commissioner Mavuso, all participants. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I will then proceed to do the presentation. As you can see in our presentation outline, we will briefly look at the background, objectives, the methodology, the prescripts, findings, recommendations, and then conclude. The study from, as Commissioner Mavuso indicated, we started conceptualizing it in 2020 when there were questions raised about whether SMS members are competent, whether they understand their jobs, and if they are not able to perform their jobs, what could be the reasons for that? And it is for that reason that we undertook this study to try to understand what enables or inhibits a senior manager to perform in the public service. The issue of performance, I think we all know, is absolutely important in the areas of professional development, especially in the context of building a capable and developmental state. So when these questions were being raised, it was important for the PSC to look into the matter so that we are able to contextualize what is it that makes SMS members perform and what is it that makes them to fail to perform. And as we say, this is well within the mandate of the PSC. So quickly, the objectives of the studies were to identify and to assess the influence of enablers and inhibitors of job performance of SMS members in the public service. We wanted to be able to propose appropriate interventions to improve the appointment, promotion, and performance management of senior managers, and then provide possible managerial approaches to motivate SMS members to perform. This we will look at in the findings. And the methodology that we followed was largely qualitative. We collected primary data in 2021. We did not target all departments. We looked at selected departments, 2 at national level and 2 in provinces. However, there were challenges in the participation of the Northwest Province. I think we all know at some stage, Northwest Province was under administration, and those would have been some of the factors that contributed to difficulties in the possible identified departments to participate. Nonetheless, our target was SMS members in those departments that participated. We received 192 questionnaires, and it was a detailed questionnaire. And coincidentally, as we were conducting this particular study, the process of developing the framework on professionalization of the public sector had already been initiated. So we had the opportunity, as and when we were receiving feedback and identifying the issues, to use some of the findings towards the PSC submission, towards the development of the framework on professionalization of the public service. I just thought it's important to indicate that we didn't do the study for the framework, but it happened to be a coincidence. And this report and many other reports done by the PSC formed the basis for our inputs into the framework. In a nutshell, in this particular slide, you can see the data collection. And around June, we had already done the analysis and the draft report. We even had a roundtable discussion where SMS members were invited from the participating departments and the non-participating departments, just to test as to whether what came from those who took the time to respond are general views that are shared. And we found that there was a lot of alignment. People were quite comfortable with how SMS members from the selected departments were able to project the issues. And around September, the report was approved by the Commission. In terms of the prescripts that we looked at, I will not go into the details. We did look at the Public Service Act, the regulations, the white paper on the transformation of the public service, the Senior Management Service Handbook, the white paper on human resource management, the Public Finance Management Act, the Human Resource Development Strategy of the country, as well as the National Implementation Framework towards the professionalization of the public service. At the time when we were finalizing the report, the framework had not been approved yet, but there was already a draft that had been doing the rounds. And because we were involved in that process, we were also equally aware of some of the preliminary recommendations from the framework. Now, in terms of the literature, when we looked at literature on what they consider to be the enablers and inhibitors of performance in the public service, I think from our side is to say recruitment and selection, they are supposed to be done in line with the prescripts. And what we found from the respondents is that there is actually appreciation that the frameworks and the norms that have been put in place in this particular area, they give comfort to SMS members that this environment is well regulated. And when we looked at literature also from other sectors, there was general consensus that when recruitment and selection are effectively managed, they contribute towards performance at the level of individuals, units, as well as institutions broadly. But when they are poorly managed, they tend to be extremely cumbersome, or they can actually be short-circuited. But in the long term, they are costly. Quickly, I think when we say they tend to be costly, it's financial in instances where there are grievances and complaints, and employers are found to have transgressed prescripts, but they also become costly when other employees are aware that there were shortcuts taken in appointing particular people, and those types of observations and practices tend to demoralize staff. And that is the costly element of it. Is not just financial, but it has a spillover effect in other areas. So the literature then says, depending on how you manage your recruitment and selection process, this can either become an enhancer for performance, or it can actually become a hindrance, especially if you take shortcuts to appoint people who are incompetent, and you place those people in very different areas as subordinates, superiors, or even people at the same level with your SMS members, and you expect your SMS members to perform. I think what the literature basically says is that a senior manager is not an island. They are only able to perform provided those who are around them as subordinates, seniors, and peers are also equally competent, committed, and they are doing what is expected of them. In terms of performance management and contracting, I think this is one of the areas that, not just in the public service, it is regarded as frustrating and often a contested concept and practice. So in the public service, we do know that performance management and contracting were introduced in the late 1990s, early 2000s as part of the new public management. And yes, when it is done properly, it does enhance accountability and control, and it does lead to performance improvement because people know if they don't perform, they will be fired. But obviously, if performance management and contracting are not properly addressed, they are reduced to a compliance element. One of the issues, obviously, that is raised with the PMDS is that it can be dependent on the subjective judgments of supervisors, employees themselves, as well as other parties and structures that are put in place to try to bring objectivity into the system. Here we are talking about moderation committees. They are made up of humans who have the capacity to be objective and can also be subjective. So the view that we got from the literature and the participants is that performance agreements and contracts, they have had a superficial effect in the public service because they have been reduced to a level of compliance as opposed to being real instruments of managing performance, to the extent that when people perform and they perform very well, they get recognized and rewarded. And if they don't perform, they get fired. And obviously other people can blame that on the labor relations environment and our labor laws. But that is basically what the literature is saying is also the problem in other sectors. So the prerequisite for effective performance management is a good accountability framework and sheer honesty by all parties. And I think the last statement, sheer honesty by all parties, cannot be overemphasized. But we do know that at some stage, the NDP lamented the lack of accountability in the public service due to the lack of a coherent accountability and consequence management framework. We do use the word consequence management negatively, but I think that is what the NDP was referring to. So in terms of recognition and promotion as an enabler of performance, this, the literature says, recognition is one of the simplest way of enhancing performance, not financial rewards, people simply want to be recognized that I am doing the job that I am hired and I'm adding extra effort to do it very, very well. So this is one of the areas that is often very difficult to deal with, because the assumption that is often made is that people want to be recognized in monetary terms. However, salary and other financial rewards, they do contribute as enablers or inhibitors of performance. It is a standard issue when people work hard and they are rewarded financially, the chances are they will want to even work more harder so that they can be recognized also in the future. And that encourages other people and those who are dragging their feet to do the same. However, when financial rewards are dished out to people who are not performing, financial rewards becomes an inhibitor, because people are observing non-performers being rewarded for one reason or the other. So, in the absence of financial rewards, or a little financial reward that we call R1 reward, not lots of money or thousands, R1, where people are intrinsically motivated to perform because there is recognition and acknowledgement from their superiors and peers, as well as members of the public, just to say thank you, we find that a R1 financial reward does contribute towards becoming an enabler of performance. The political administrative interface, again, the need for balance and a stable political administrative interface is seen as one of those aspects that can enable SMS members to perform. Obviously, when it is unbalanced and unstable, automatically there will be non-performance. But within the political administrative interface, there is no formula or rules or regulations around it. The literature said ethics, integrity, and maturity are the biggest drivers that ensures balance and stability in this complex relationship. So, in terms of our findings, one of the things that we asked our senior managers was, do you really know what are the ideal attributes of a public servant in the South African context? And we found that almost all participants highlighted what those characteristics are: honesty, integrity, loyalty to the country, dedication and commitment to serving the public, servant leadership, innovation, and an understanding of government policies and operations. So we were convinced that our SMS members know what is expected of them. And what was interesting was when we asked them, do you think SMS members in your institutions, including yourself, actually exhibit these ideal characteristics? The majority said yes, but there are isolated instances of people who are not. Now, let's, I think a lot of the details in that respect are in the report, but let's get to the crux of what we were looking for. What should the public service do, or what enables you to perform based on your experiences, practices, and your wishes? These were some of the common areas: prompt and constructive support and feedback from competent supervisors and managers, teamwork and collaboration between colleagues and departmental units, promotion and non-financial recognition by peers and superiors, continuous professional development and training, as well as other developmental opportunities, adequate management support, a conducive work environment that also includes flexible working hours. I think this one is as a result of the fact that we've come out of COVID and the hybrid work arrangements. But I must just indicate that the areas of professional continuous development, this is one of the areas that people lamented on, that when they are afforded the opportunity to be developed and to develop themselves, they do find that they are able to perform better. But the opportunities for development for senior managers in the public service are extremely limited. Now, we had what we call the real inhibitors that the SMS members identified: continuous restructuring and reorganization of departments. I think there are instances where certain departments are involved in over and over many years. There is no way in which SMS members will perform because they are edgy, not knowing where they are going, or they will be one of the parties that get restructured or reorganized. And often, these restructuring for some people lead them into better positions where they are able to use their skills, but there were isolated instances of people who felt they were misplaced by the continuous reorganization and restructuring. Incompetent supervisors, this is self-explanatory. If your supervisor doesn't know what they are doing, their chances of engaging with you or guiding you are limited or zero. Political interference and involvement in recruitment and selection. I think this remains one of those areas where people say when there is political interference or involvement and it results in incompetent peers or subordinates or superiors being brought in, then the involvement of political leaders in recruitment and selection becomes an inhibitor. But, you know, if not, it's fine. Toxic organizational culture, it was one of the inhibitors, and it becomes one of those issues where SMS members themselves know they can either contribute to it by being toxic themselves, or they can contribute by being bystanders who are not doing anything to curb toxicity when it emerges. Appointment and deployment of incompetent persons into key positions. I think this one is linked with the political administrative interface and the competence or incompetence of supervisors. But I think the key factor that was being alluded to here is in instances where you find that the delegations framework are poorly implemented and that even the appointment of people who support SMS members tends to be incompetent, it is a problem. And it's also important just to note that when an SMS member is appointed into an institution, you do not bring your entourage. You inherit people, whether those people are competent or not. Lack of support from some superiors. It said some because there was a sense that many SMS members felt that they are properly supported by competent and understanding superiors who also allow them to make mistakes when they try new things and to be guided to correct. And this is where innovation comes in. When there is lack of tolerance for error, people are never going to be encouraged to try new things. But where there is tolerance, people then have the opportunity to try things, and where they fail, they get supported to correct. Low staff morale and lack of passion for work assigned. This is absolutely important. The issue of low lack of passion, it's not just about the work being assigned. The view was that if you are not passionate of being a public servant, it doesn't matter what work we give you. You're never going to do it with passion and energy and extra effort. Then there is the issue of the budget cuts. So out of all the enablers and inhibitors, there were what we call the double-edged factors. Organizational culture. If it is good, it supports performance. If it is bad, it does not. So organizational culture is one of those things. It's neither bad nor good. People make it bad or good. Restructuring and reorganization, when it is done properly, the view was that it does in actual fact enhance performance. But when it is poorly done and it is overdone on a continuous basis, that is when it becomes an inhibitor. Then there is the issue of the competency levels of supervisors and subordinates. This is one of those areas, again, where the view is when people are competent that you work with, naturally part of that competence rubs off on you. But when they are incompetent, no matter how hard you try, the chances are you are going to degenerate to their level of incompetence for the sake of peace and sanity. Then there is the issue of employee commitment again, that people who are committed they always try harder and harder and harder to make things work. But those who are not, they actually find reasons not to do anything. Now, when we move to the recommendations that we made in the study, we were of the opinion that everything that has been said in actual fact is aligning to what the NDP had said, and the recommendations were aligned with what at the time was emerging as the framework on professionalization of the public service. SMS members said implement merit-based recruitment, promotion, transfers, and secondment. And this aspect is being addressed in Pillar 1 of the professionalization framework. Prohibit political considerations, except if you're dealing with HOD appointments in line with the recommendations of the National Development Plan. And the professionalization framework, again, is taking this issue forward. And the Public Service Amendment Bill and PAMA Bill are also seeking to address this. Prioritize in terms of time and other types of support, training and capacity development for senior managers. Pillar 4 of the professionalization framework is taking this issue forward, and other work, obviously, that is being done by the NSG, and then expedite the process of developing a holistic performance reward framework. We are aware that Pillar 3 of the framework is dealing with this, and the DPSA is in the process of reviewing the PMDS. And institutionalization of the CVPs as a basis to build a professional and conducive public service work environment. This is one of those issues that cuts across all the pillars of the professionalization framework. It should, in actual fact, cut across everything that we do, because the constitutional values and principles have been built into the Code of Conduct for Public Servants. Now, there were other mechanisms that people said, please implement the following things to minimize or to manage the likely impact of inhibitors. Capacitate incompetent and non-supportive supervisors and subordinates. They didn't say fire them, they said capacitate them, but when that capacitation fails, then institute consequence management. And we do have frameworks for that in the public service, but I think Pillar 4 of the professionalization framework and the DPSA directive that was issued a few weeks ago is seeking to address this. Recognize and reward in kind, dedicated, loyal, and diligent employees. Let me qualify it. Dedicated, loyal, and diligent employees to the Republic, to the Constitution, to the framework and the prescripts of the public service, not to particular persons or personalities. This was one of those issues that they said, let's get this right. And we are hoping that obviously the PMDS framework, the reviewed one, is going to deal with this. Delegate authority for decision-making and program implementation. This is one of the areas. Frameworks have been put in place by DPSA and National Treasury, and I think the current Public Service Amendment Act is trying to deal with this, but delegations have largely been uneven in the public service, but this is a matter that is receiving attention. Then address capacity and budget constraints constructively by setting realistic performance targets. We think Pillar 3 and 4 of the framework is dealing with that, but obviously the DPSA framework on PMDS should assist in this issue of set realistic performance targets. We're not saying set low targets. We say your targets must be commensurate with the capacity that you have and the budget that you have. Prevent tensions at the political administrative interface by implementing the NDP recommendations and the framework on the professionalization of the public service. The PSC is of the view that the framework on professionalization reiterated recommendations that came from the NDP. Obviously, certain recommendations are fairly novel in this framework. The framework has already been approved. The time to debate and to discuss, it's over. We must implement, and as administrators, we must find ways of implementing this framework and not make excuses. Now, in conclusion, members, we are of the view that building a capable and developmental state does require that we have managers and leaders, all of those, they fall under the senior management service, leaders and managers, who are capable, ethical, and innovative. These things are not negotiable. Being capable, ethical, without being innovative is not. All of them and all other adjectives that we can add together, they must go hand in hand if we want to improve the lives of the people that we serve. Because as public servants, we are here to serve the people. It is incumbent on government to deal with the issue of capacity development, training, and management in the public service. We do know a lot is invested into this, but from this particular study and other studies that we have done before, we found that senior managers tend to be sidelined because we are dealing with a lot, there is a lot of crisis management, but we are saying if we need to move forward, we really need to prioritize the capacity development of SMS members. Now, the complex relationship at the political administrative interface, it must be addressed. It's not something that we can wish away. It is in the order of public administration, but it must be addressed in an ethical and mature manner that ensures organizational stability and compliance with prescripts. It must facilitate service delivery, and it must restore trust and confidence in the legitimacy and capacity of the public service. So from where we are as the PSC, the findings and the recommendations, we are comfortable that we were able to use them to make our submissions towards the framework on professionalization of the public sector. And this framework has been approved, which the sister institutions will talk to. And whilst we are saying the recommendations are being taken forward through the professionalization framework, the Public Service Amendment Bill, the PAMA, other ongoing work that DPSA, NSG, and DPME are doing, we say it is important to keep on reflecting on what our SMS members are saying, because these reports are not just meant for, these are the recommendations and the findings, they also become a frame of reference and reflection by those of us who are involved in the service of the people. This is the end of my presentation. Maybe my commissioner would want to say one or two words before we hand over to the chair.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sidibe. Thanks, Chairperson. This is the end of our presentation, and I'm sure we're quite ready to engage and hand over back to you. Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much, Commissioner and DG. And I will take hands, honorable members, for this presentation, comments, questions from honorable members on the PSC presentation. No, thank you. I can see there's two hands. I will start with Honorable Schreiber. Okay, there are many hands. I will start with Honorable Kibi, followed by Honorable Schreiber, then Honorable Nhueng, Honorable Notnachal, and then Honorable Manil.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Good morning, your good selves, the Minister, Deputy Minister, honorable members, the commissioners and the chairperson, and everybody on the floor. Let me also join you, Honorable Chair, in congratulating Professor Ngaweni for his appointment on his new responsibility. Honorable Chair, let me welcome the presentation by PSC. I have, I think, two questions for PSC. PSC, I just want to know moving forward, how are we going to balance between salary and financial reward as enablers or inhibitors of performance and the need to reduce the wage bill? And my second one is, do you still see the prevalence of recruitment, promotion, transfers, and secondments that are not merit-based? How do they manifest? I thank you, Honorable Chair. Those are my two questions.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kibu. And the last hand will be at the end, will be Honorable Ntuli. Honorable Schreiber.
Good morning, Honorable Chair and fellow members, as well as to the presenters. Thank you very much for that. Chair, my question in relation to the PSC presentation is on the slide where it speaks to the recommendations, the outcome of this project, specifically on point 2 there, where it says that one of the recommendations in line with the professionalisation framework is to prohibit political considerations or involvement in the recruitment, transfer, or appointment of SMS members, etc. I think the big question there, with reference to the Public Service Amendment Act or Public Service Amendment Bill, is frankly whether it goes nearly far enough. Because I don't think that there is anything in that bill that actually speaks to prohibiting involvement of political parties, of political issues in recruitment. And so the question to the PSC would be, is it not important for us to go beyond what is on the table now and actually make it explicitly clear that this kind of practice, this kind of interference must be outlawed? Because at the moment, with the legislation that's on the table, it speaks to the devolution of some of these appointing powers. It speaks to the limitation of political office bearers being appointed into these senior positions, but it does not actually prohibit the involvement of political issues, parties, actors, as this recommendation outlines. So does this not mean that we've actually fallen well short of this particular recommendation and that we should not go back and make sure that we go beyond this particular amendment to ensure that we outlaw and prohibit this practice as the recommendation states? Thank you, Chair.
Chairperson, are you there?
Okay. Yes, Honorable Honorable Ntuli, I'm here. Then the next honorable member is Honorable Ngweng.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Let me acknowledge the presence of our Minister, all members of the Portfolio Committee. My question is just simply to get from the entire presentation as to what are the measuring tools, if not mechanisms, that can effectively assess or measure the productivity of public services. Thank you very much.
Honorable, thank you, Honorable Ngweng. Honorable Notnaghan.
Good morning to everybody on the platform, and thank you, Chair, for giving me the opportunity. I would just like to ask one question, and that would be the following. Innovation is critical to improving a public bureaucracy that is often perceived to limit innovative ways of solving problems. What observations were found in the study? I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Notnaghan. Honorable Maneli.
Thank you, Chairperson, and greetings to everyone on the platform. Chairperson, in the presentation, the slide that says that the performance management development system is dependent on the subjective judgments of employees, supervisors, personal interactions, and employees, as well as moderation committees. Chairperson, I just wanted to know as to how is this happening? And then whether is this not something to worry about? If it is, how so? Then my other question, Chairperson, will be, what principles and requirements are required when an institution is restructuring or reorganizing? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Maneli. The last honorable member is Honorable Ntuli.
Thank you, Chairperson. I would like to greet everyone on the platform, the minister in our midst, and all protocol is observed in terms of the department and its entities. Chair, I'm joining my colleagues in welcoming the presentation by PSC, and safe to say we really note PSC as they striving for this public service to the high class. Chair, one would also not forget to congratulate Professor Ngaweni for the election in his new position. We are proud of him and wishing him all the best in representing South Africa. And also, one would love to wish the minister the happy birthday to her appointment as the minister in this department, and really commend her for her dedication, because it's as if now we've started the term with her, the way he's been dedicated to her work. But back to PSC, whilst you're striving PSC, you want to see the compliance, etc. Some of the questions have been covered, but I wanted to do follow up to what the presenter said in terms of the capacitation, in terms of poor performance, to say, who do they push thereafter? Because if I'm not performing, if I'm performing poorly, obvious I can't capacitate myself. Now, if things are still not right, and yet some authorized people to capacitate me haven't capacitated me, whom then do they push in this regard? Thank you, Chair.
No, thank you very much, Honorable Ntuli. And I think I agree with you that we must acknowledge the progress that have been made by this sixth administration, and focusing mainly to the professionalization of this public service. And we must also, at some point commend the work of the PSC as an independent entity. And obvious and progress made, it's welcomed by this portfolio committee. And I will give then to the PSC to respond to questions from honorable members. And I'm not sure if they've heard Honorable Schreiber, because I couldn't pick up his questions because he was always disappearing. I'm not sure whether it's the network, but if you have not heard him, you will then indicate, honorable colleagues. Thank you. Mr. Mavuso, Commissioner Mavuso, and your team.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. We appreciate the questions that have been posed. I think they're very, very important, and they touch on the very heart of the outcomes that we were able to get out of the study. For example, the question by Honorable Schreiber, which deals with the prohibition of political considerations in appointments, when he said that this may not necessarily go far enough. From what we were able to distill, indeed, they don't. And it's more the reason why we believe that we have to do much more to ensure that that aspect is dealt with in a much more systematic fashion. For example, in instances where we do believe that we fall short of that, I'm sure in the fullness of time, we can be able to refine that and improve on that. For us as the Public Service Commission, would want a situation whereby you have a public service which is apolitical. In other words, it can only be able to do what it was meant to do and nothing else. There may be mandates and what have you of the government that is in place, but surely that should not necessarily require civil servants or public servants who are political in themselves, because that is a different realm altogether. I'm of the view also that in instances where productivity, as Honorable Mohan correctly said, that indeed the tools that deal with the measurement of poor performance or productivity, so to put it, have to be put in place. Insofar as we are concerned, these are already in place. And I do believe that my colleague will be able to add on some of these matters so that we can then be able to see the extent to which we can be able to deal with this matter in a more systematic fashion. In other words, it must be more holistic. There must be a starting point and there must be a process of continuous development in dealing with the challenges that are faced by the public service. And Dr. Sidibe will add on some of the questions.
Thanks, Chairperson, members, and thanks, Commissioner. Let me start with the last point, productivity and the tools for measuring SMS productivity and performance. The PMDS, technically, if it is properly implemented, it is the tool that should be used for measuring the performance of SMS members and performance management and assessment. It has to be an ongoing process. And where there is, again, we repeat the notion of honesty by the employee and the supervisor, these instruments work, because the purpose is not to be punitive in performance management, but it is to say, this is the standard that we set for that which needed to be done. Has it been achieved or not? If not, what are the developmental areas that we need to address? So the PMDS, if we can all implement it properly, it is already there, but I think the DPSA in the review will address some of the weaknesses that crept in, that brought in elements of subjectivity that then undermined the development aspect of the PMDS and rather reduced it to a financial reward mechanism. In terms of productivity, the DPSA has developed a productivity assessment tool that looks broadly at the organization, and they are in the process of implementing that productivity assessment tool. And if the outcomes of such assessment are actually interrogated, organizations will be able to improve, because it does not target the person per se, but it looks at the systems, the processes, and the procedures and factors that would contribute towards a fluctuation in the performance of departments. Now, if I can go back to the question raised by Honorable Member Gibi, how are we going to balance salaries, financial rewards, and the need to reduce the wage bill? This is a very tricky one, but again, from the study, what is being indicated is that largely SMS members are not looking for a financial reward. If you do have it, then that is great. But they are looking for other types of recognition. They are looking for support. They want to be given the opportunity to develop themselves so that as they help the institution to deliver, they themselves are also being developed. So there are ways, and I think members would be aware that the so-called merit bonus was discontinued, and we have not necessarily had large numbers of employees leaving the public service. I'm actually not aware of people who left who said because there is no longer a merit award. So when we appoint people who are dedicated and committed to serving the public, the financial aspect is not there. So we are not talking about reducing people's salaries, but let us just say to members, in the past 5 to 8 years, senior managers, members would be aware there are years where certain categories of SMS members were not even getting what we call the normal salary increase of 2 or 3%. They were either getting 0 or 1%. But the real public servants are still here to serve. And hopefully when the economy improves, the senior managers will be enabled or supported to be able, to manage to live within the current economic climate, because we have seen 1 or 2 papers where people are arguing that senior managers have been subsidizing the employer because the employer is not able to give them salary increases that are commensurate with the CPI. So for us, that is not a big issue, because I think SMS members are not looking for financial rewards, to put it that way. Are there still RNS that are not merit-based? We see few complaints and grievances pertaining to recruitment and selection where questions are raised around the merit aspect of it, or some of them are merely about the compliance with the prescripts and so forth. So there will always be instances of that nature, but I think what we need to indicate is not all of the complaints and grievances are necessarily substantiated. We do find that some of them are unsubstantiated. Like I said in the presentation, and I think in another report that is going to come before the portfolio committee very soon on the qualifications of SMS, we do find that most of our senior managers are highly qualified. They are indeed competent, but we cannot ignore the fact that there have been factors that have impacted on their ability to perform. So it would be different if we looked at a particular institution whose performance is being questioned and then we started zooming in on what are the senior managers doing. But from where we are sitting, we think questions around merit-based complaints and grievances have been drastically reduced over the years, partly because of some of the directives that were put in place by the DPSA and the fact that we have seen close to 100% compliance with most of those. I didn't say 100%, close to 100%. There are still instances that we deal with when we investigate matters where there is non-compliance. And often our findings and recommendations is that those appointments are irregular and they need to be reversed. And the observations that we made about whether the public service supports innovation, I think it was member, I didn't write the name, not Nahel. Because we were not zooming in specifically on the issue of innovation, we cannot comment per se, but the view that we got from the senior managers who participated is that they regard innovation as an important practice, as an important principle, and as also an important competency that SMS members must have. But for innovation to take root, the public service needs to understand that with innovation, the possibility for failure is there. And if there is no assurance that failed innovations that are not deliberate will be used as the opportunity to learn, but not as the opportunity to fire you, then senior managers are going to be scared of trying to innovate. And we think the NSG and CPSI, they are trying to work into the space. I think from a human resource management practice, we need to be able to make sure that our frameworks do support proper innovation and make room for failure where the failure is used as the opportunity to learn. The issue of, was it the subjectivity? How do we manage and prevent subjectivity? I think, like we said, performance management and assessment is an ongoing process. If it is done with an element of honesty, integrity, and diligence, the subjectivity aspect of it can be drastically reduced. Where there are humans, an element of subjectivity can never be 100% removed. But the systems that we put in place and the honesty and the rigor of the systems is what ensures that there is an element of objectivity. What principles, I think it was Member Manelli, what principles are required when an institution is restructuring? There is a detailed DPSA framework that deals with the issue of restructuring and reorganization. I think the aspect that we have raised in the report is that perpetual restructuring and reorganization is the problem. Reorganization and restructuring that is well thought and properly implemented is not the problem. But when you perpetually restructure and reorganize, no matter how noble the intentions are, the organization is going to go into an element of paralysis. So if a question were to be raised, what would be the principle? From the PSC's perspective, our position is always that there are no perfect organizations and they will never exist. What we need to get right is once we have restructured an organization, we must allow it to operate in the manner in which we have done and rather support the people to adjust to the reorganization so that going forward, what then gets done, it's moderate tweaking of what needs to be tweaked if there is a need for that, but not whole-scale restructuring and reorganization. So don't reorganize every 5 years or 10 years. Maybe that would be the principle, but we do not have research to back that up. Capacitation, whom do we push? Supervisors do have the responsibility when you implement PMDS to identify people's developmental needs and support them. And development is not just about paying for people to go for training. The NSG has a lot of free online training programs that people can attend. Colleagues and supervisors who are capable can serve as mentors and coaches for on-the-job training. But at the end of the day, a senior manager, we are not talking about junior people, even middle managers are in the same category, cannot abdicate responsibility for self-development in the name of my manager must do it to me. Development is what every person must do to themselves and for themselves, and it is what the environment should push in. It is for that reason that the recommendation says when the employer has done everything possible to capacitate and to support a person and they are not winning, we do have a policy and the labor relations allow incapacity management where we manage to exit people out. I think there have been few instances of that in the public service where people are managed out due to poor performance, even after being given the opportunity to develop themselves and to be developed through the intervention of the employer. I hope I have addressed all the questions.
Just maybe to add a final point to say that the purpose and intention of the public service is to ensure that people who are fit for purpose are the ones who are appointed. And that, of course, is based on merit. In other words, meritocracy would become the issue that we want to emphasize upon, that people have to be appointed on the basis of merit and nothing else. That for us is absolutely crucial. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Commissioner and DG. Now we're taking the next presentation, the NSG.
Good morning, Chairperson, and to the Portfolio Committee members, and also to the Minister of Public Service and Administration and DM and all senior managers and executive managers who are present today. I'm Faith Nyaka. I'm going to take you through the presentation for the progress that we have made on the implementation of the National Framework towards the professionalization of the public sector. And before I proceed, I need to also register that the principal sent his apology. He is delivering a course on managing government relations. So he requested us to do the presentation on his behalf. With regard to the first slide, we are presenting the summary of the timelines and all the milestones that we have achieved since the publication of the draft national framework towards the professionalization of the public sector. And the dates comes from the beginning of November in 2020, right down to March 2022, and where the Minister of Public Service and Administration appointed the advisory panel that worked on this development of this framework. In the next slide is also the milestones. And what is critical here is that on the 11th of August 2023, the Minister of Public Service and Administration gazetted this framework for the public to notify them that the implementation date is the 1st of April 2024. And then also the Minister released Volume 1 of directives for implementation of this framework on the 16th of February 2024. In terms of the advocacy, ensuring that the public is aware of the framework, we had an advocacy plan, and there were various activities for notifying or making the public aware of the framework. We met higher education institutions with leading departments that are also responsible for implementing this framework. We discussed and we also gave them support, the legislatures and also the premier's offices. And what is still pending there is that we had not had a session with Northwest Mpumalanga and Free State, but we're still having up to 31st March. And I think that would also be covered because our minister is currently busy leading advocacy session for the directives that have been issued, and she will be in Mpumalanga today. And what is contained in the framework is what the minister will be sharing in terms of the advocacy of the directive that has been issued. We also engaged the critical stakeholders because we are talking about professionalizing the public service. So we met with the professional bodies for the key professions that have been highlighted in the framework that we need to professionalize. I'm not going to read each slide there. All those professional councils, they attended the session where we engaged with them, and also the key departments also present in this meeting discussing how we are going to professionalize the public sector. In terms of the 5 pillars, we are going to give you progress for all the departments that are responsible for implementation of the various pillars from recruitment and selection up to the last pillar. In terms of pillar 1, you'll see that the NSG was supposed to review Nyukela. Nyukela has been reviewed and that has been achieved, and we have planned to pilot Nyukela in 2024 March. The critical issue that was highlighted there was that we need to differentiate the Nyukela 13 and 14 from Nyukela of the executives. So that has been done. there will be a pilot to ensure that it's going to be implemented in the next financial year. The Nyukela for middle management also has been finalized, and then we have planned to pilot it, and also we need to conclude with labor before it is implemented. It will be implemented in the financial period 2024-2025. And then with regard to extension of Nyukela to the other sectors of our economy, your security cluster, to your staff appointment into political office, local government, and state-owned senior managers in state-owned entities, we are going to pilot that in terms of the dates. We are not reporting on this because it's planned for the next financial year. In terms of collaboration with higher education institutions and professional bodies, that has already happened. That's why we marked it as achieved. MOUs have been signed with the institutions. We have started working with them on the professionalization. And in terms of the first entry, there's some work that is happening under the under DPSA with regard to the work that was proposed in the framework, the review of academic qualifications. The directive was issued by the minister in February. It guides the public service in terms of what needs to be done here. And collaboration with higher education institutions and professional bodies, also in the work that DPSA is doing. They've signed the MOU with SAPAM and 3 higher education institutions because they need to influence the curriculum that is offered to the learners there, and also collaboration in terms of conducting research. Review of occupational-based assessment and use results for appointment. We have issued the directive that guides, Minister issued the directive that will guide the departments. Integrity assessment, the Minister of Public Service and Administration directive was issued. It's going to be implemented from 1st April. The pilot has been finalized at the end of February, and the explanatory note will be issued by the DPSA by 15 March with regard to how to deal with the integrity assessment. Merit-based recruitment is in the directive. We have guided how public service should address the issue of appointing based on merit. Alignment of internship with pre-entry orientation. The directive is also giving a direction and guiding the departments how to implement this. They've already removed, there was an outcry that we need to remove the issue of experience and so forth. The DPSA has already dealt with that in the directive. In terms of Pillar 1 for Public Service Commission, the framework required that the proposal that was approved was that the Public Service Commission needs also to participate in the issue of recruitment by creating a pool of a database for pool of experts to ensure that they support the executive authority during the recruitment processes in those particular positions. At present, the Public Service Commission has already developed a database with more than 500 experts who have registered. And in terms of this work, there will be collaboration in preparation for this work between DPSA, the Presidency, offices of the Premiers, DCOG, and Public Service Commission. In terms of recruitment of commissioners, the framework proposal was that we need to also use experts to be part of the panel of a selection committee. So those are some of the issues that will come out once the PSC bill has been approved. And also in terms of Public Service Commission working in local government to make sure that they also create that pool of experts. That work is going to be, they will start by 2024-25, and also depending on the approval of that bill. And the framework also stipulates that the DPSA and DCOG must lead legislative and policy directive on matters that relates to expert panels. With regard to Pillar 2, it talks about induction and onboarding. What is new in terms of this pillar? The public service has already issued the directive for induction. The directive was issued by the circular was issued on the 11th of September, and it applies to all levels from level 1 to 16. Is that we need to ensure that there will be induction immediately or within the first 6 months of appointment into the public service. And the induction of boards of SOEs, the NSG has already inducted 52 boards, and also extending induction to other sectors as I've indicated in the previous slides. That's going to be work that is going to be done in the next upcoming financial year. But the reorientation program for serving public servants, the DPSA has already issued Circular 42 in September, that all public servants who have been in service, they need to go back to the simulator for reorientation to upskill them. And these are the entities, some of the entities from the 52 that the NSG has already taken them through for induction purposes. Pillar 3 is with regard to performance planning and management. You will see that the DPSA, in terms of the proposal, was expected to review performance management system. The MPSA directive has been finalized by the 21st. The performance management system for HOD directive is still under development in consultation with DPME and Public Service Commission, and it is planned to be released by the end of the financial year. For SMS and below levels, this work is planned for the period 2024-25. And in terms of Public Service Commission playing a role in the performance evaluation of heads of departments to strengthen objectivity and introduce a comprehensive approach that should be to link performance of individuals with the institutions that they lead. They are working together in this instance, and this work is planned for 2025-26. The DPSA is going to lead the directive for evaluations of HODs, but this work is done in collaboration with DPSA, Presidency, and the Premier and the DPME. With regard to Pillar 4, it talks about continuing learning and professional development. And this links very well with the presentation that was done by Public Service Commission with regard to how are we going to develop and capacitate public servants where there is a need for upskilling and also for continuing professional development. The framework proposed and identified key professions, not to say other professions are not important in the public service, but these are the key professions that have been prioritized that we need to start with for professionalization. And it also identifies the departments that are responsible for leading the professionalization of those key professions. You'll see with ICT and HRM&D, it's DPSA and COGTA. And then what has been done in terms of status, the DPSA has already developed a framework for GTOS in terms of for operationalization of GTOS, which is included in the amended Public Service Regulation of 2016. There was a workshop with DPSA and also some of the GTOS and their committee and also the professional bodies that are responsible for professionalization of ICT on the 29th of February. The NSG has already signed MOUs with the South African Board of People's Practitioners, and the MOU with ICT professionals, professional body is in progress because these are the key professions that we need to ensure that there are relevant programs for professionalization. National Treasury, all the financial management, risk and audit, SCM is responsible for professionalization. They've already held 2 webinars with CFOs, auditors, and senior and SCM officials. They also had a national conference for 3 days with regard to those key professions. They've drafted the competency framework for SCM. And also we as NSG have signed the MOU with a professional body that is responsible for SCM and internal auditors. And the MOU for the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners is also underway, which deals with issues of compliance. The Department of Public Works and the Council for Built Environment, they need to professionalize the built environment. The MOU has been signed with CBE in terms of how we are going to professionalize the built environment. And this links well with the work that the President asked the NSG to do in terms of the skills audit for your infrastructure departments. In Pillar 5, the proposal was that the revolving door policy needs to be reviewed by the DPSA. Work is in progress. They are working on that. and the political administrative interface in terms of the head of the public administration, the DG in Presidents, and also in the Office of the Premiers. The PSA and PAMA bill were approved and adopted by the National Assembly and will still undergo the approval process with the National Council of Provinces. The tenure of HODs and DGs and municipal managers in terms of the framework, the municipal managers' issues will be dealt with by DCOC. The DPSA currently in terms of this work, in terms of Regulation 87A for HODs, provides a transitional measure while work is being done on the 10-year tenure. Work is in progress in terms of ensuring that they're going to implement this. Review of the RPL policy by DHED and the SAQA. The Department of Higher Education already established an interdepartmental RPL policy, and then DPS and NSG are also members of this committee, steering committee, because there's an outcry that we need to make sure that we are able to utilize RPL for recruitment in the public service. The DPSA, while the DHED is ensuring that they're reviewing this policy, the coordination, they're calling it now a framework. It needs to ensure that it encompasses the work that the DPSA is currently doing in terms of ensuring that there's an RPL assessment sector in the public service. The RPL policy for public service is in process. It has been developed, and it's also currently being presented in that steering committee for their inputs. In terms of consequence management, this work has been planned for this financial year. The discipline management has been finalized by DPSA in this current financial year, and it is being implemented. The strategy will be supported by the Minister of Public Service Administration's directives, scheduled to be released in this financial year. And we are going to start implementing in the next financial year, and also to review the relevant disciplinary codes and tracking of criminal offenses. In terms of the skills audit, the President requested the NSG and the Human Science Research Council to conduct a skills audit for infrastructure department and frontline staff. In terms of this, these are the departments in that box below that are participating. Initially, it started with 8 departments that are listed: the transport, human settlement, up to your employment and labor. And the project plan and timelines were finalized. And these respond to the 5 pillars of the framework. The Director Generals of the departments were also involved so that they can discuss the skills audit methodology, which was developed by the Department of Public Service and Administration. In terms of timelines and delivery, this skills audit is going to be finalized in two blocks. The first block has been planned for this financial year, and the second one in the next financial year. What they've achieved in this financial year up to the 4th quarter is that they have done a desktop review of all the information and documentation of the various departments. And they've already done a situation analysis, and they've also, each department has also participated in that. And there are 2 departments that opted out, which is Home Affairs and SASSA, because they are having other projects that they've already started of skills audit, but they will share the results with these departments. Workshops were conducted in January 2023 to validate the situational analysis reports with each department, and the DPSA participated to oversee the work there and also supported to make inputs and to support the departments to draft their to develop their competency frameworks. And then in Q4, between January and March now, there are preparations to conduct surveys, and which are going to be implemented next year. And then also we are waiting for the ethical approval from the Human Science Research Council Research Ethics Committee before we can undertake those surveys. In terms of the next steps with regard to the NSG, we need to pilot the pre-entry examination for middle management, senior management, and executives. and also roll out and extend induction and reorientation programs to the other departments that are sectors that are required to do that. We also need to finalize the advocacy and also the skills project that is planned for 24-25. The DPSA is going to monitor the implementation of the directives for professionalization, as we have indicated that the minister has started with the various roadshows to ensure that the public services are aware of the directives and also they will understand how to implement them. And also the DPSA will work collaboratively with the ICT and HRMD professionals to ensure that we professionalize the ICT and HRMD. Also, DPSA is working with the GSK cluster and heads of corporate services to strengthen the monitoring of implementation of the professionalization directives. Office of the Public Service Commission, they're going to play an oversight role in ensuring that we comply with the proposals that have been approved by Cabinet in the implementation of the framework and report on that. DPME also, they have a role there to make sure that their oversight role, that the APPs and strat plans are also going to include what is entailed in the directives, because the minister requested for one whole plan, which is going to be, make sure that is going to be monitored for implementation in the whole public service. National Treasury, the issue of professionalizing the SCM, financial management, risk and audit is also very critical, especially SCM, because it was raised in the Zondo Commission and there was a directive that was issued many years ago that we need to professionalize SCM. Also, they will collaborate with the various professional bodies, which they've already started to professionalize these key professions. DCOGTA need to take a lead from DPSA and issue directives on the professionalization of local government in collaboration with SALGA. They will also work with professional bodies for local government professionalization. AGSA had a number of meetings and also with our minister to discuss about how the audit will be conducted for implementation of this framework. The one plan, comprehensive plan for the public services, the one that the Auditor General is going to audit, which will guide the whole public service to implement the framework. Chairperson, thank you. This is the end of the presentation.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nyaka. Let's take the last presentation and then we'll deliberate, which is the presentation by the department.
Apologies, Chair. I was speaking and I was muted. Apologies. Good morning, Chairperson, the honorable members, minister and deputy ministers. I am going to request, I'm on the road, I'm unable to present, and I'm going to request my colleague, Dr. Anusha, who will be presenting on behalf of the PSA. And I will come back after the presentation. Thank you, Chair.
No, thank you very much, DG, and good morning.
Good morning, Chairperson, members of the Portfolio Committee, ministers on the platform, and colleagues. Chair, our presentation to you this morning is going to be on the efforts to institutionalize the implementation and monitoring of the Directive on Human Resources Management and Development for the Public Service Professionalization. Chair, we have heard colleagues from the Public Service Commission as well as the National School of Government who have already presented and highlighted the very key, critical and crucial work then that is being undertaken by the DPSA. And then in the interest of time, we're not going to repeat that. Chairperson, in our presentation, Chairperson, in our presentation for the outline, we would discuss the internal capacity optimization. We would look briefly at the monitoring methodology. We would then proceed to the implementation and monitoring. We have heard the Public Service Commission's investigative report this morning, and we will show as the DPSA how we support the PSC in this task. And we would also look at the key capacity building interventions as our way forward. Chair, when we look at the optimization strategy of the DPSA, what we say here is that as part of the optimization strategy, we have looked at an ecosystem at the DPSA. We do this, Chairperson, to focus attention on creating a DPSA that is agile and modern, a DPSA that operates within a strategic imagination, where we learn to anticipate early on challenges and then respond proactively within the ecosystem then of the work that we do. In understanding the strategic imagination, our optimization strategy is based on 3 key critical strategies and drivers. These drivers are efficiency, effectiveness, and value for money. Then is it important, Chairperson, for us as the DPSA to make sure that we have a fit-for-purpose structure that will enable the professionalization work. So our Director General has assembled an internal team to program, manage, and monitor the implementation of the work on the professionalization framework, as well as the directive, as we've heard, that was indicated, was issued on the 16th of February by the MPSA under the DPSA. We also make sure that the internal capacity assessment has been conducted to ensure, as I've indicated, that we are an agile, modern department fit to implement then the important work. Our change or culture change project has been rolled out as part of the change management processes internal to the department. And in driving efficiency, effectiveness, and value for money at the DPSA, we have made sure that we have knowledge management officials that we have appointed and from internal to the department that can improve data management, the mining of data, the slicing and dicing of data, the use of data and data analytics to inform the work on the professionalization frameworks as well as the internal work of the DPSA. We are also busy with an early warning system that is being developed to improve internal capacity so that we can always stay on top of things. We are able to monitor, we're able to assess, and most importantly, support our departments across the public service in complying with the many prescripts and the many projects that we have going on. Chairperson, then moving on to our monitoring methodology. A few minutes ago, I've spoken to the ecosystem that we have created as our optimization strategies, as well as our optimization drivers. Now, when we look at the monitoring methodology, we're looking at creating then a biosphere where basically we take the ecosystem and place it into the biosphere. And here we are saying that as the directive on human resources management and development for the public service professionalization is in its nascent stages, then the adopted monitoring methodology is pivotal in guiding us as the public service through the initial steps, the infancy stages, as it were, towards enhancing organizational performance and professionalism within the public service. This methodology, Chairperson, is not complex and it's not complicated. It is merely underpinned, underscored, or underlined, if you like, by systematic observation, analytical review, and strategic utilizations of insights as we go through these infancy steps to foster accountability, transparency, and at the same time, an ethical, capable, and developmental state. So what we would be doing in a very tangible way, Chairperson, is systematic observations where our approach would be to monitoring activities against the established norms and standards that the DPSA is responsible for and that which we have set in our directive. This would assist us to lay the groundwork for data-informed evaluations. We will be looking at the analytical reviews as we progress and an in-depth data analysis to identify performance gaps and required adjustments utilizing various analytical tools to ensure that we can see strategic alignment. Then the insights that we would use, that we would have gathered from our foresights and from our hindsight, those insights in strategic utilization will help us for decision-making, for optimizing our resources, for promoting transparency and accountability, as I've indicated, which becomes critical denominators and determinators in public service professionalization. So, Chairperson, this very streamlined methodology aligns with the directive's objectives. It catalyzes the transformation of public service organizations towards achieving excellence. What it also assists us with, Chairperson, is embedding a culture of continuous improvement, ensuring that as the directive evolves, we also grow as the DPSA, and the public service is well equipped to adapt and thrive in an environment that values principles, elements, characteristics, and features such as professionalism, professionalizing, professionalization, accountability, and effective service delivery to our people of South Africa. We do this, Chairperson, not through just the insights that I've given you on the monitoring methodology, on the directive that we have created and the MPSA has signed off, but we do this against the bedrock of several catalytic projects. Why catalytic projects, Chairperson? Because catalytic projects allow us within the sphere and the biosphere of norms and standards to understand the appropriateness and the insightfulness of what we do. So our catalytic projects underscores the project's role in facilitating swift, effective change, aligning closely with the strategic objectives of the directive, as well as the MPSA. And such projects then must involve the implementation of new technologies, simple processes that help us to reduce red tape in the public service, processes that help us to reduce reporting in the public service as we become modern, as we become agile, so that there's careful planning, there's impeccable execution, and there's monitoring, like the way I've explained, that's simple, but one that which ensures our success and sustainability as the public service. Moving on then to the next slide, we then highlight, Chairperson, some of the implementation and monitoring tools. I'm going to go through this quite quickly because our colleagues at the PSC and NSG have articulated the vast amount, the broad work that's undertaken by the DPSA. And I think, perhaps at this juncture, allow me then, Chairperson, to indicate that the directive is only one directive, volume 1. Then by the end of this month, the end of the current fiscal year, we would have the second volume in place. But when we speak of volumes of directives, Chairperson, sometime it may give the interpretation in mathematics of just two things. So I think it's important for me just to highlight that these are just volumes of directives that sets norms and standards, that sets all of those, challenges that the Public Service Commission alluded to in the morning. And I'm going to show you in just a couple of seconds, Chairperson, how we then address that, within the MPSA portfolio. We've also got reforms on the discipline management process that we're busy with. We've got ethics officers that designated. We've already heard the great work that we've done there on the PAMA and the Public Service Act and regulations, the Public Service Charter, implementing, piloting, mentoring and coaching programs through emerging leaders in the public service program, where over 500 young South Africans are mentored to develop leadership skills. We've also established then comprehensive governance structures, with the Auditor General South Africa, the PSC, the NSG, the DPME, the COC and the COCTA family, GSKID and DG's corporate head meeting. We've already met with the corporate heads across the public service, where my Director General then gave the directive on the professionalization framework. And Chairperson, it's been absolutely welcomed and well received by public servants. That is an indicator, not several perhaps, but an indicator, Chairperson, that we're heading towards the correct direction to ensure effective implementation and simple monitoring, but impactful monitoring of our directive. This structure facilitates coordination among the different sectors and departments, ensuring that alignment. We've set very explicit and measurable norms and standards. We've also got capacity building and training, implementing comprehensive socialization programs, social compact programs, so that we can equip public servants with the necessary skills, knowledge, and the directive then sets this trajectory for us. It covers ethics, integrity, service delivery, innovation, and other areas of crucial need for professionalization, like minimum experience requirements. We've heard the Public Service Commission, we've heard the NSG refer to innovation, and that's what the directive does. Now, Chairperson, we've heard the questions this morning about how do we solidify meritocratic appointments, recruitment and selection in the public service. We've heard the Public Service Commission say that as long as there's human beings, there shall be a hint, just a hint of subjectivity. We have addressed that matter to the various tools that we propose, and we have indicated within our directive that must be implemented on 1 April forward, although work has commenced, where we have brought in integrity and ethical assessments for the first time in the South African public sector. And if we were to implement the ethics and integrity testing, indeed it will help. Indeed, it will be one measure, again, towards that right step. We've heard on the PMDS and the accountability mechanisms for the HODs, which comes now this month, March, and then in April as part of Volume 2. We've also heard about the public engagement and transparency, but today, for the first time, Chairperson, on our directive per se, on our directive only, we have with our minister on ministerial level, a meeting with the public servants. And that's going to take place in just a couple hours. Perhaps let me add, Chairperson, name. For good measure, those public servants that are in around Mpumalanga, please come and join us. Technology and innovation, we will continue to enhance and streamline our technology. Good news is that we're working closely with National Treasury, where as the DPSA, we can take out now the HRM&D module from the IFMS, and that's going to enable much quicker, much agile business processes and business process enhancement. We've heard already, Chairperson, on the legal and regulatory frameworks and how that has been passed and the good work that's been done there by the department. So I'm not going to go into it. Safe to say, whatever we do, the national framework towards public sector professionalization and the directives that support the framework, the many directives are living documents. It's living work, and it will constantly and rapidly evolve as the work progresses. So we are in our infancy stages, as I've said, but continuous improvement and adaptation is something on our radar. I'm done with the first part, Chairperson. Moving on to the second part, some of the pipeline initiatives that we have in place to support the public service report that we've heard this morning. We are looking at an integrated reporting system between the DPSA and the DPME, where we would link the APPs, the annual performance plans, the personal development plans, the human resources plans, the human resource plan implementation reports, the human resource development plans, and various other little reports into one kind of a single plan for reporting in the public service. Work in this area has commenced. Then taking the DPME, the MTSF targets on professionalization directive have already been integrated. We spoke about the HOD and then the new authorities or executive authorities to be inducted in the PMDS roles then for heads of departments and departments. Also, we've commenced much discussion, with the Auditor General of South Africa, where there will be a good auditing scope. Chairperson, an auditing scope with control measures that speaks to the work of professionalizing the public service, and that is done together with the DPSA, AXA, sister departments, etc. But then the question may arise, how does the directive support the Public Service Commission's findings? Now, what we've done, Chairperson, for simplicity, to condense it, we've taken the enablers, the inhibitors, the findings, and the recommendations of the Public Service Commission. We have come up with thematic areas, and for each thematic area, we show how we are supporting, the PSE, and we also give you in-text directive references. So as an example, when you look at the highlights that have come up from the PSC report on the NDP and recommendations for public service professionalism, if you look into the introduction and purpose of our directive, we clearly articulate these objectives. We show the overarching goal of implementing such recommendations in the PSC report. When we look at limiting political involvement in recruitment and appointments, I've touched a little on meritocratic selection procedures and how that mitigates political interference or ensures that we have merit-based selection and recruitment processes. I've spoken, consider, if you may, Chairperson, I've spoken a few minutes ago about the integrity tests, the ethical testings, and also in addition, the directive establishes clear criteria and processes for recruitment and selection to avoid bias, to promote fairness, thus very implicitly eliminating political interference. We show that in part 2. Moving on then, Chairperson, how do we prioritize training and development for staff, as well as train or manage incompetent supervisors that have come out of the PSC report? And for this, we're saying that we have waived experience for entry-level posts. We have also looked at, part C and E of our directive speaks to that. We're focusing on competency-based management and assessments, together with our partners, our strategic partners, the NSG, the PSC. How can we identify and address some of these gaps through the various reports? Part D of our directive talks about that. Part C speaks about maintaining databases for qualifications, allocating budgets for training, highlighting commitment to continuous learning and professional development. Part E talks about that. With C, which suggests enhanced mechanisms for induction and onboarding requirements that we have introduced. We also look at ethics, code of conduct for managers, and managers must ensure that new employees undergo departmental inductions, demonstrating a structured support system then. When we look at the holistic performance reward framework, we've heard a lot about it. The directive discusses competency assessments. It discusses performance management arrangements and procedures, which then form the basis of the directive. Institutionalizing core values and principles as a thematic area, together with recognition and rewarding dedicated employees this time, delegating decision-making authority, addressing budgeting capacity issues, departmental restructuring, and toxic organizational culture were some of the thematic areas that came out of the PSC report. And the DPSA then, through parts C, D, E, even B for that matter, we addressed these concerns, either by inferences, direct correlation, or sometimes by just juxtaposition. Either way, we have addressed it in an effective strategy within our directive. Then, Chairperson, I'm going to try and move this little strip that's worrying my screen, do pardon me for that. So if you could see here on this screen, I'm going to now summarize. I've done the very detailed part, but let me summarize, Chairperson, the key capacity building interventions to professionalize the public sector. Chair, at this point in time, I could literally give you an exhaustive list, but I'm not going to do that. I am mindful of the time. So when you look at the future outlook here, you can see the president spoke about little shoots. And the president said this, these shoots must lead to these beautiful green trees. As, of course, a metaphoric analogy for the work we do at the DPSA. And I do acknowledge I am borrowing the words from the president, but we must make sure that we have strategic alignment. We must make sure that there's synergies in place where we leverage core competencies. There's norms and standards that we've built into our directive for rollout 1 April. But importantly, we mustn't lose sight, Chairperson, that the implementation of specific projects to support the work of professionalization has long begun, and it will continue into the new fiscal year. Bills were passed, and the next stage of the bills will be the NCOP. Let me pause and say congratulations to my minister. Minister, in 365 days, this were all we achieved and much, much more. So then what are the future trajectories? How are we going to move ahead, colleagues? We're going to look at complementing the mandatory integrity tests for screening, collaborating with higher education institutes, professional bodies, and our role on norms and standards is, as an example, facilitating discussions with the professional bodies. And we just a couple weeks back met with EXA, who's the Engineering Council of South Africa, and where we linked all engineers across the public service and those colleagues working in the engineering field with EXA. And we've also asked that EXA broaden their scope beyond just engineering as we know it, Chairperson. Let's say industrial engineering, civil engineering, electrical engineering, electronic engineering, into artificial engineering. That's the modern public service we aim for, into agricultural engineering and those type of things. Our job, as I said, is the norms and standards. We spoke about the integrity test. We spoke about the reorientation. We spoke about academic qualifications. Perhaps I paraphrased, but we did touch on that. So with the discipline and consequence management for discipline. And then the stabilized political administrative interface, PSC NSG also covered that. Greater focus on career management and development. That is something that came out of the PSC report, and we will be doing that. We're also looking then at a revolving door policy. We do have a revolving door policy in place. This is now enhancement for 2024 and beyond. And then we're also doing incubations at the DPSA. Let's call that one bankable projects. Incubation where, like the green shoots that you see going on my screen here, we also have testing where we put things like the directive through a test phase while we're in fully blown implementation mode. And that is where then I must say, thank you so much, Chairperson. Thank you, colleagues, for your indulgence. That's the DPSA. We're bringing you tomorrow today. Thank you.
Wow, thank you very much, Ms. Naidu, and obvious Ms. Nyaka for your detailed presentations before this committee. Honorable members, now I'm taking hands to deliberate on the two presentations of the National School of Government and also the department. There's two hands, honorable members. I will start with Honorable, okay. Here are the hands coming. I will start with Honorable Nduli, followed by Honorable Komane, and then Honorable Kibi. You will, Latikas, speak on the two presentations, the NSG and also the department, Honorable members.
Thank you, Chair. Chairperson, I'd love to welcome both presentations from NSG and the department. And Chair, the NSG is really growing. And one would love to appreciate and commend the NSG for the good work that they are doing. But I wanted to check something, Chair, from NSG in terms of Nyukela, to say, isn't it Nyukela a stumbling block at some stage? For instance, to experienced employees qualifying for a certain post, but only to find that that particular person has not gone through Nyukela program. Noting, Chairperson, the pre-exemption program as well, to say now here is the post. Or are there any chances for that person to be absorbed in that post and then go for Nyukela later on? Paired with that, Chair, is the skills audit. Is the skills audit to say initial what happens to someone with less skills to a post, but having been there for quite some time. I'm just citing examples to say what chances are given to such people if there are any. That is NSG. The department again, we commend the work done by the department. Indeed, the department you are in work in progress. We've heard about the public, we've heard about the innovations, the new innovations of the department. For instance, you mentioned that you've had the meeting with public servants for the first time, and we also had in your presentation the emphasis on instilling a ethical progress for a capable state. Now, just a clarity to say, Chair, and the meeting, compliance is at the center. of governmental operations. So as DPSA, what measures are there for non-compliance, which would be complementing the good work that the department is striving for? Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ntuli. And then I'm taking Honorable Komane.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good morning to the meeting and all the protocol is observed. Chair, let us also acknowledge the presentations by the two presenters, Chair, but one would have only questions to the NSG. The first question would then be, does the extension of Nukela to the security cluster means that they would have to write Nukela examinations for entry into senior positions, besides them having the required expected qualifications when they go through to be appointed into positions? The question would emanate from the latter speaker when she says that is Nukela not going to prohibit other qualifying personnel into the positions? And the second question would then be, because Nukela has just been introduced in the few years, then what informs the review? Because it is now being reviewed. Is it being reviewed because there are challenges, or what informs the reviews? Maybe if you can be taken into confidence for it having been introduced in just a few years, but then now there are reviews with in it. What has informed those reviews? So, and thank you very much for now, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Komane. Honorable Kibi.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. And let me also welcome and appreciate the presentation, the two presentations. Honorable Chair, I think on UNSG, I'm covered by Honorable Ntuli, but I have one question on professional engagement with professional bodies, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, what I want to know from UNSG are your engagements with professional bodies and key departments bearing desired results? What are the remaining challenges, if there are any remaining challenges? On a department, on delegating a decision-making authority, Chair, do you foresee any challenges with the delegation of decision-making authority from the executive authority to heads of department and accounting officers? When is the delegation of such authority taking off across the public service? Those are my questions, Honorable Chair, and I thank you.
Honorable members, if there are no further questions, let's give one the SG to start, and then after the NSG, it will be the department, and then obvious, I will give the minister. If the minister is still in the platform, if not the minister, the deputy minister, so that we then close this meeting. NSG.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. I'm going to start responding to the questions from the Honorable Mantuli. The first one, and I also like to thank her for acknowledging the growth of our institution. The issue of whether Nukela is a stumbling block to experienced employees or not. The way the Nyukela has been designed and the adverts, I think the DPSA, when Nyukela was introduced, issued a directive in terms of how this is going to be conducted. It's not a stumbling block because public servants know about the requirement. And in the public service, when adverts are issued for promotion in the senior management services or a position, they include that employees need to undergo Nyukela. Nyukela, it's a program that is online, which an employee can do it at his own time. It is self-paced, and also it gives employees an opportunity. I think you write 3 times if you're not doing well for you to be able to get the certificate. And it allows you, it gives you 3 attempts for each section that you're dealing with. And we believe that for making Nyukela to be compulsory, chairperson is very important. Maybe for experienced employees in terms of a waiver, it's something that the minister is here. She will respond to that because the directive was issued there. The reason why Nyukela has been issued a chairperson, you will see the report for the skills audit. It assists to support them prior to taking up positions because it's sort of a refresher. You will see that we are also bringing back the induction program to reorientate them, because if you are not undergoing any training and you just come into the system, you'll struggle to be able to implement your work as a senior manager. So Nyukela is designed to make sure that it equips you as a senior manager to be able to deliver at the expected level, because there's some work that you go through and it also assesses you online. It gives you outcomes immediately. And if you didn't do well, it also supports, give you another opportunity to redo the work. And I'll leave the other issues of whether it should be, people should be given an exemption or not, because there was a directive that has been signed and issued on how it should be conducted. And currently also the directives that are signed by the minister. And then the other issue, I think it doesn't prohibit any employee to apply for position, because you know immediately as you apply that you need to write that assessment. It takes 2 weeks for employees who are not full-time working, if you take few hours on a daily basis after work to complete the assessment. And then I think it also answers the issues of I'll go again to the Nyukela again from Ms. Komane, where she asked to say its extension, is it going to hinder the entry into senior position? Nyukela does not hinder, because it's not only Nyukela that gives you entry. You'll see the directives that minister has issued. It's Nyukela plus other issues, which means in the security cluster, their requirements for appointment into the positions will remain as they are. However, there is an addition to make sure that we equip senior managers in those positions to be able to know what is expected as a senior manager in that particular position. So we're not going to tamper, Nyukela doesn't tamper with requirements in the security cluster on how they do promotion, but it's going to equip the people who are applying for those positions, similar to the senior managers who are entering the public service. What informs reviews? I think on the NSG, every time for each and every course, we do have a chief directorate that is responsible for impact and monitoring. So once we design courses, we send people down. The Nyukela one is online, where after writing, you evaluate it and you indicate what are the issues. And also in cabinet, there was an outcry because we had one in Nyukela for level 13 to level 16. So the outcry was that the Nyukela that we have in its current form, it doesn't assess the executives, your DGs, at the level that it needs to assess them. That's the other reason for the review. And the others, the data that was collected, everyone who writes, you assess the course and the program, you indicate. So at the executive level, they were complaining the DGs and the DDGs in terms of the level at which the current Nyukela is pitched. A director doesn't perform what at the level of, or what is expected of the DG level. So the differentiation is to address that For your director level, it assesses the director at the level of his or her work, and also the DG and the DDG at the level of how they're expected to perform. The issue of skills audit, what will happen to someone with less skills? I think the skills audit is very important, and in the report, chairperson of the skills audit, it highlighted the key gaps in terms of the assessment when they were doing this part one of the skills audit. So it will help us to make sure that our interventions for professional development of public servants are relevant. Because currently, if you just go for a course because I want to attend it, and if it doesn't even improve my performance in the public service, it's not going to help. So the skills audit is going to help us to say these people have been undergoing professional development. Do we see improvement? What are the causes? Why are there no improvement in terms of service delivered? So this skills audit is going to help and make sure that they give faith relevant training in terms of the skills gap that I have, not the generic training because there's a course I also want to attend. And the other issue is that that is going to help that we capacitate the staff members who are there to make sure that when there are promotional opportunities in the organization, they are not going to be disadvantaged because maybe they can't perform, they can't pass Nyukela, they cannot do the work. The skills audit is going to help us to make sure that we train them and give them relevant skills and competencies to make them to be very effective and efficient. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. We are moving to the department.
Thank you, Chairperson. We have mainly, I think, 3 questions as the department. The first question, I think, had to do with exemption regarding Nyukela. What we have allowed is that people are not, when they apply for positions and they don't have Nyukela, those who should have it, they are not excluded from the process, but they are also given time to be able to do Nyukela. So if you qualify, you can get shortlisted, and then you must come for the interviews with Nyukela certificate showing that you have done Nyukela. So we have accommodated those who may not be having Nyukela by the time they apply for positions. So it's not necessarily a deviation or an exemption, but it's to allow for people because Nyukela is still a new program that has been introduced in 2021 or implemented from 2021, April 2021. There was also a question around compliance. How are we assisting departments to comply, or how are we working with departments to comply, and the importance of compliance? Our response to this question is that the measures are in Section 16A of the Public Service Act regarding what measures we have at our disposal. But more importantly is that these measures include EAs being in a position to do discipline management or consequence management with their heads of departments who are failing to comply or to implement directives that are coming from MPSA and any other instructions associated with those. It also includes escalating matters to Parliament through reports to Parliament. Some of the work we have done effectively is that since the beginning of this current financial year, we've put in place a mechanism to engage directly with heads of corporate services in departments, because a lot of the compliance issues have to do with corporate services. So whilst we talk to the DGs, we now talk to the heads of corporate services who are usually at DDG and chief director level in various departments. And we're seeing that this is really working, because what we do in those monthly meetings we have with them, the meetings, we started them quarterly, but we've decided in the incoming financial year, we'll do them monthly, and we do them virtually. So we share on the new directives. We also give the status reports or updates on issues that relate to compliance. And we also give an opportunity for departments to share best practice on certain areas where one department is doing better and or has innovated something that can be of benefit to other departments. And so far, that is working quite very well, Chairperson. We also have an escalation process that we implement in the department. Firstly, when we have challenges with the department, there's a DG to DG escalation. From a DG to DG escalation, if there's no improvement, then it becomes a minister to minister escalation or a minister to EA escalation, MPSA to EA escalation. When we still do not get joy about that, or we also prepare our reports and send them to cabinet as well. We have, for instance, yesterday we were presenting in the cabinet committee, Jiskit cluster, on the status of compliance in respect to discipline management in the public service and some of the interventions we have done as the department that have improved in terms of the number of cases that long-term suspensions in the system. We reported to the committee that we're doing some work there. There's a report that is final, that is out, that we have presented to cabinet in respect to that particular area. And I think we should be bringing the report to the committee as well. And another area around lifestyle audits, we are also presenting to cabinet the number of departments that have not complied despite the interventions that have been done and the escalations on those particular matters. And some of the ministers did make commitments have made commitments in terms of how they are going to improve in terms of their departments. There's a last question from Honorable Kibi around the delegations. So the current status is that there is a directive on delegations which had been issued by MPSA and which is in implementation. But the challenge is that there is no full implementation of that directive as well. Some executive authorities implement and some don't implement. And the biggest challenge is the issue of withdrawal of delegations from heads of departments. So when what we've noticed, the trend is when there are challenges in the relationship between the executive authority and the head of department, one of the things that happen is the withdrawal of the delegations by the executive authority. And when that happens, it brings the department to a standstill because the duties of the head of department cannot really be done by the executive authority. There's lots of operational issues that the heads of department must do, HR on a lot of things. So it means now the department is in a standstill because the executive authority can also may not appoint another person to act and delegate these roles to when there is the accounting officer who is appointed to do those responsibilities. So the proposed solution that we have investigated, researched, and brought into the amendments is a direct delegation of these operational roles and administration roles to the heads of departments by the Public Service Act. So it doesn't wait until an executive authority delegates, but the Act delegates directly to the head of department. So, and this is also in alignment with the PFMA, which already on financial matters delegates directly to the accounting officer. So we will only be able to implement, to roll this out once the legislation has been signed off by the president. We are aware now that the process has been adopted, the legislation, the amendments have been adopted by the National Assembly, and we are waiting for the schedule from the NCOP in terms of rolling out the process at the NCOP level. And once we get a signature, signed off legislation, then we will roll out immediately the implementation of all aspects of the legislation amendments. Thank you, Chair.
No, thank you very much, DG and colleagues. I don't think there are further follow-ups from the responses, and I don't see DG, the minister, and she's here. I will then give you, Honorable Minister, to say your few words so that we then close this meeting.
No, thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Let me appreciate the opportunity once more, but also let me congratulate our presenters here because the level of information that they had packaged for the committee, I think, has helped in the discussions. Just looking at the number of questions that would have been raised, and it became clear that most of the issues are understood. But I do want to indicate it's good that we started with the PSC in terms of our approach to the engagements today, because the PSC report gives us the base document on which there would have been credible evidence to show where challenges are and what could be done with those challenges. And I liked the presentation even more when towards the end, it was showing who is doing what within the portfolio to attend to those issues addressed by the study. Because for me, the integrated approach in dealing with any challenge, especially with respect to governance, goes a long way in addressing the problem in total. So I would want to appreciate the presentations, but also encourage that the kind of quality documents we would want to see every day in our day-to-day operations. I must indicate that probably one of the presenters would have said it's the first time that the minister is interacting with public servants. Sometimes when you think in one language and speak in another language, it does sometimes distort what we would have wanted to relay. That this would be the first time that the minister is interacting on this directive that we have just released, which talks more to professionalization. So I just wanted to contextualize that because we have been meeting and addressing a number of platforms with public servants. I think I must respond or add in the response to I'm trying to remember now who raised this. I'm just checking. I think it was Dr. Schreiber. Yes, it was Dr. Schreiber who was raising the issue that the amendments to the bills that are before the NCOP now are not good enough. The good thing is that all political parties represented in Parliament participated in those bills, engaged with those bills. And the point that he probably is raising to say people must be, I'm trying to use his direct words. He says that the amendments are not good enough. For me, the issue there is these amendments have been occasioned by these studies that have been taking place over time. And one of them being the one that was presented here. And if one listened to what the study is saying and what the amendments are saying, you will find and see the correlation between what the study recommends and what the drafting of the bill says. And when we draft legislation, we don't really draft to prohibit, we draft to enable. We have drafted the bills in order to enable senior public servants, HODs, DTGs, to be able to perform their duties in a space that allows them to. But again, also, what is hidden in the statement or the question is the assumption that when an appointment is made by a politician, it is not good enough an appointment. I must hasten to remind the honorable members that them as honorable members of the House, they sit and interview such people such as the PSC itself, the members of the PSC, the members of the public protector, all those structures, the chapter 9 and 10 institutions. And that is provided for in the Constitution, because there's nothing wrong with a politician sitting for an interview of an administrator of an independent body. And therefore this insinuation, or I don't want to say obsession, with the fight of the cadre deployment policy that has taken place in the courts. And the courts have ruled to indicate that there's nothing wrong with the cadre deployment policy. That's what the court has said. What we must ensure is to ensure that the person appointed is capacitated enough, has the best of capacity to do and to perform the task at hand. And therefore, this thing of political interference, we really must be at a point where we act in a manner that helps us transition and move from that indoctrination, because it's an untrue indoctrination. My last point would be, Honorable Chairperson, on the kind of concern that was raised by Mantuli, and would indicate that part of our strategy as a department to deal with her concern around those people who have been doing this job for so many years, but now because they do not have this particular qualification, the people are then unable to be employed to do the work. Our program on recognition of prior learning seeks to address exactly that point. Because you will find that there are many good public servants who would do their work so diligently, so efficiently, so effectively. But because we seem to quickly forget the past we come from, that education was once in South Africa a privilege of the few. Now we tend to say these people do not qualify, yet when it comes to performance, these people perform the best they can be. Our approach to say, let us recognize prior learning, And our working on that recognition of prior learning is a testimony to say we wouldn't want to see able and capable people being denied opportunities they deserve only because of a paper called a certificate. So for us, it is the capacity to do the work and the ability to do the work is what matters most, because you are employed to do the work. And therefore that RPL that we are starting to work on policy will help those people. I think I've covered the areas that I have been concerned about. I'm not sure if DM is on the line, and because I know that we are all in Mpumalanga this couple of days working on the ground. She probably, if she's on the platform, she may remind me if there's something that when it comes to policy, one would have forgotten. But we do need to indicate that there's the whole halubalu discussion around the delegation of authority. Let us understand which authority, because it is inherent in both the Constitution and in subsequent policy documents and laws, whether you talk PFMA, the executive authority, which talks to policy direction, rests with the executive authority, who will be a political head of an institution of government. And the administrative authority rests with the administrator. Now, we've had problems. The study has shown, not this one only by the PSC, there are many before. You go to the NTP, you will find this issue about the political administrative dichotomy, where you find that a department suffers instability because that relationship between the political head and the administrative head is marred by conflict. You do find the political head who would want to hold, because these in the current laws, because it is the political head who delegates to the administrative head. Some political heads will sit with the delegations, and the department will suffer because such a political head truly has no time and is unable to perform those administrative functions. So all we did in the legislation is to ensure that the executive authority keeps the executive powers of policy and direction of the department. And the administrative head becomes accountable for the administration of a department. For me, that it's not even necessary to say it's delegation or it's, there are so many terms used. For me, it's delineation of responsibilities, giving the right responsibilities to the right person charged with such a responsibility. I thought I must clarify that before I step off. I think Honorable Chairperson, let me hold it there. And once more, appreciate the fact that you give us the time to tell South Africa what we are doing as a department, and as the portfolio, which is a public service portfolio, with both the NSG poised now to help us with the capacity, with the bill empowering them to have those programs that would be compulsory for any public servant, so that nobody says, I did not know in the end when it is time for that person to account. So as well as what the PSC is doing with analyzing the state of the public service and giving us feedback on those areas that really require our attention, and the responsiveness of the department in such to such reports, so as to ensure that indeed we give a true meaning to building this ethical, well-capacitated developmental state. I thank you, Chairperson, and thank you to honorable members for keeping us on our toes. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Honorable Minister. And thank you to your team of the Public Service and Administration, also led today by the DG. And thank you very much to the NSG, led today by the principal, and also the Public Service Commission that was led by the Commissioner Mavuso. Thank you very much to all of you colleagues and also our staff and honorable members. The time now is 10 minutes past 12, and the meeting is adjourned for today. And thank you very much to all of you.
Long live. Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Recording stopped.